Welcome to episode 175 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Tylor Bohlman, who wrote and produced a feature film called Jake's Dead. He's going to walk us through his entire process from writing the script to producing the movie. He didn't have a lot of money and just had to really be creative to get this film finished. It's a great story about determination and persistence, so stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 175. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing filmmaker Tylor Bohlman. Here is the interview. Welcome, Tylor, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me today.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
So to start out, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment industry?
Sure. So my background, I don't know. I'm from Marin County, California. I grew up, I loved stories, I loved movies, and I got myself into photography. Going into college, I decided to go into advertising. I liked the idea of speaking to people, of coming up with messaging. My ultimate fantasy was really to get a billboard, like make a billboard, like put something out there that enough people were going to see, like make a difference in a way. Mm-hmm. So being in advertising didn't end up being exactly what I thought it would be. Even in school, I interned at some ad agencies. I realized that I was going to have to end up advertising products that I didn't believe in. Like go out and come up with a way to sell bleach to somebody. Like that started to sound not as fun to me.
Yeah.
And then doing internships at a couple ad agencies while I was in school. There was basically a Black Monday, Black Tuesdays, where everybody in the entire agency would get fired, except for maybe one or two people, and then a new agency would pop up somewhere else. But I was like, that's kind of hazardous work. It was fun when you were there. Mm-hmm. They had all the toys. It was like startups are now, but they had pool tables and bars and stuff like that, and it was fun environments. But it kind of was fleeting, and again, you'd have to work for someone who you weren't necessarily that big of a fan of. So while I was at the Academy of Art studying advertising, someone asked me if I had ever thought about doing a commercial. And I honestly really hadn't, but I kind of put everything together in my head. I was like, well, in terms of a communication avenue, you have someone on screen speaking, you have text, you have graphics, you have kind of anything you want to tell a quick story. And I didn't even make a commercial. I just instantly switched over to motion picture and television at the Academy of Art. And it was one of the better decisions I've ever made. In terms of the classes that taught you how to tell a story, what it meant to tell it visually versus, the classes that were how to come up with a script. And, just learning screenwriting and learning the kind of blueprints of making a feature film were fascinating. And it kind of clicked with me really well. The keeping it short, keeping it simple. It's all about the action and the dialogue, and you're not supposed to put much else in there. You just want to keep it flowing, keep people entertained, but ultimately describe something that no one's ever seen or heard before too. And then Jake's Dead was partly a thesis project. So during my last couple semesters at the Academy, I used their equipment to the largest extent I possibly could. And we made the film mostly during that period of time. And then there was a long kind of tail of making that film as well. And then since then, I've done mostly freelance video production up in the Bay Area. I do marketing videos for people. I had a marketing agency in San Francisco for a little while. We traveled the world doing videos for wineries and music, dance music events and stuff like that. And so right now I'm still up in the Bay Area. I'm very much thinking about moving down to LA this summer. So, a lot of change is possible, but I'm still writing and producing, as well as the commercial stuff. I've got some actually narrative stuff in the works too.
Okay, perfect. Now, you mentioned photography, and I noticed on your IMDb page you've been the cinematographer not only on Jake's Dead, but a bunch of other films as well. How did that? Were you taking photography classes, cinematographer classes, as well as learning screenwriting in school?
Yeah. So the cinematography was the thing that came naturally. That was kind of my thought was that's where I would go with it all. At least that would be my in, because I did have a background in photography. I was pretty good at just the technical aspects of things. I really liked the equipment, and I liked how a photography or cinematography department would work in a film. And the idea of like moving a camera around to tell a story, very much appealed to me. So that was kind of my bread and butter going into things was, the cinematography and director of photography departments. I decided at the academy to kind of take a little bit of everything. I wanted to learn kind of as much as I could while I was there. So I ended up taking a lot of screenwriting courses and directing courses and sound courses. I mean, I really just wanted to learn how to do every element of it. And I had done some screenwriting, not really screenwriting, kind of playwriting almost when I was younger, and then kind of forgot about it. And then as I got back into these things, I remembered how much I liked it, and kind of was inspired to put some more stories down, as it were. And so that's how I also got into the screenwriting element of it.
Okay, perfect. So let's dig into Jake's Dead. Maybe to start out, you can give us a quick pitch or a log line for the film.
Sure. The movie is about, basically, it's two brothers who are reunited by the death of their father. One of the brothers is back at their family house and addicted to this mysterious green drug. And Jake, the younger brother, who comes back to basically deal with all of this, ends up killing the drug dealer in an act of protecting his brother. But it doesn't really go down so cleanly, and they end up in kind of a nightmare of betrayal, love, and drugs.
Okay, good. So where did this idea come from?
So the director, Jack Graham, he had a friend, Gabe Jones, and they had this basic idea of the two brothers and the drug scenario. And then I took that idea with Jack, and then we went to another screenwriter, Zach Cooper, and we turned the thing into an actual screenplay. And I think we wrote for it was a long writing process, at least 6 months, and with 3 different writers, where I would basically take the script from working with Jack to working with Zach, and then back again, and kind of getting both of their inputs, and then obviously trying to put my own in wherever I could. And the script changed a lot as we were writing it. I mean, there's whole sections of the movie that we basically had written and then got rid of, and then even after we've shot the film, we were like, well, actually, it needs something like that back. So we went back, referred to that section, used parts of it, and then actually went back and added the scenes again.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you are starting this process of writing it, did you guys know that you were going to be shooting it yourself? So you knew that the budget was going to be limited? Did you know roughly what the budget was going to ultimately be? Was that impacting sort of your writing process? Yeah,
so that's a really good question. One of the things I learned at the academy, or, I think most people are taught this, and it's a really hard thing to actually do, is to not write for the budget of the film. Is to kind of like put down the idea that needs to be down there, and then figure out later how to represent that when you're shooting it. So to answer your question, I guess we did know that we were going to be the ones shooting this. I think probably right in the very beginning it was a question mark, but it was pretty soon stated that yes, we were going to be the people making this, and we weren't going to have almost any money to do it. So that played into the budget. But I mean, we wrote a pretty aggressive script in terms of like what needed to be shot. But we did take into account all the things that were at our disposal, all the locations and whatnot.
Okay. I wonder if you could give us a quick just run through a sort of what does your crew look like on a film this size? What camera do you use? You know, lighting, just any kind of technical aspects. I know there's a lot of screenwriters out there that are thinking, gee, I wonder if I could shoot my feature film, and maybe you could just run through some of those technical things. Sure.
So we got really lucky with everything is the first thing I will say. You know, and it's not super easy, but it's much easier to inspire people to come on to set to help you film something than it is to, you know, have people help you with post-production or anything that's really not on a film set. You know, people do like coming out. And the timing of it, for me, was really nice because it was the end of my Academy of Art career. I was able to use all of their resources, and I had a lot of extra time. So we also had another connection that basically lent us a bulk of equipment for a long period of time for some cash, but mostly investment in the project. That was, he rented us like things that we didn't want to move around that much, like a lot of dolly track, a jib, and some lighting and stands and stuff. From the school, we basically rented equipment every weekend for several months. And we would pick up the equipment on Thursday and return it back on a Tuesday. And it was the camera, a bunch of additional lighting, and kind of depending on what we were going to shoot, we would get different equipment from them. The camera itself needed special permission every time we got it out, so I'd have to go and meet with the director of the film department and be like, hey, we're doing something for real, and we do need this camera. The camera itself was an HPX 170. For the most part, which is a Panasonic camera. It's kind of it's like a slight grown-up version of the HPX 200, which a lot of people are familiar with, a mini DV camera, which we shot some stuff on as well. The whole problem, technically, with when we shot this, it was right as DSLRs were coming out. So the Canon 5D Mark I, the very first one that actually let people start shooting on DSLRs, that had just come out. And my buddy had one. So some of the scenes are filmed on that camera. But for the most part, everything was filmed on these Panasonic HPX cameras. And we had, you know, there's a Firestore, which is a big hard drive that's stuck off the side of the camera, which would fall off, and then it would rip the FireWire cable, and we ended up having to spend money on repairing that. I mean, there were so many things that nowadays, you know, you could almost film it just as well with your phone, and we were, you know, using all this crazy kind of middle of the technology road equipment, which caused a lot of problems, not like the least being when we were doing the final finishing, and then we went to Gravitas for quality control. They kept failing the quality control because the HPX 170 shot in a thing called the advanced pull down, which is a 24 frames per second kind of band-aid where they shot at 30 frames a second and then removed frames. And then we edited the thing in Final Cut 7, which could only deal with like 10% of the clips that had that. So that when we were going through quality control, we literally had to move the entire project over to Adobe Premiere, which fixed all of that like perfectly, but then caused like thousands of other little problems. It became a nightmare, but it would have been something that, you know, no one would have to deal with before or after that moment. It was just kind of, we picked the wrong moment to make a movie, which is kind of funny. Yeah. But so we shot on these 4-day weekends using the school's equipment, and it was a lot of loading in and loading out equipment. And the crew, we had a very scattered crew. There was obviously me and the director, and that was like that was it. Like, and then it was, oh, let's call some people and see who can show up. And so, you know, a lot of times we had boom operators or just people that were there to help carry stuff that had never really worked on a set, but they were our friends. Mm-hmm. And that was fine, but it was very inconsistent. We had a few assistants that were there very consistently that helped us with sound and kind of assistant producing and things like that. But again, most people were very inexperienced in the larger scheme of things. So I was fine with it, but it was very much like, let's all kind of learn how to do this together. We even had, some of the actors would show up on days that they weren't needed because they wanted to help and just be around set. The best line was one of the actors being like, don't put a credit as boom guy or boom operator for me. I'll just, don't worry about that one. But I mean, it was definitely a nice family venture. Like, everyone participated a lot, and I don't know, there was a good reward in the feeling of making it, and I think everyone learned a lot, but it was a really hard road, and it's not that I won't tell anyone not to try it, but it's like, be wary and try to have a lot of friends, because you'll probably have half as many friends when you're done, but you need a lot to start with.
Yeah. So it sounds like the way you're saying, and I think it's an excellent point, a lot of people think it's fun to come on set and help out, so it's easier to get those people than the post-production people. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your post-production. Was that a long process? What year did you shoot this?
Yes, post-production was a long process. We shot in 2009, I want to say.
Okay.
Which is a long time ago now.
Yeah.
So we had shot in 2009. The one thing we did not do, which would have been, would have made things a lot easier, is that we didn't have anyone on site doing dailies or editing. So we basically finished several months of shooting with just a ton of footage, and then the editor had to kind of start from scratch there. And we had an amazing editor, Jesse Chandler, and he helped us kind of organize everything and wrap our heads around it. At one point, we printed out all of the scenes, a still from each scene, and posted them up on a wall and tried to figure out what we could take out and how we could reorganize things. The first cut of the film was 2.5 hours long, so we've already cut half an hour out of it, and it's still 2 hours long. It's still a pretty long film. But it's funny because it gets better. We almost shot it chronologically, so as you watch the movie, the scenes, everything's tighter. We just figured out how to do everything better and better. So, if you can make it through the beginning, you're going to like the rest of it. Post-production, we went back and shot a year later. We did pickup shots. We did a week of pickup shots. And that was trippy because they were being cut against almost close-up of actor, and then a year later, close-up of actor. And they had different hairstyles, and we were completely surprised that it actually worked. We could point out and you would notice, oh yeah, his hair is definitely shorter in that scene. But if we don't point it out, almost no one has ever said what's going on, So the actual editing took a while. There was a kind of a VFX breakdown, or a VFX nightmare, where we had a VFX crew kind of lined up, and they were very ambitious with what they were going to be able to do. And so the main bad guy in the film, the dealer, has some facial disfiguring that we wanted to do, it's an effect of the drug. And it's different at different points in the movie, and then there's certain scenes where it's supposed to be at its peak. Well, the VFX crew thought it would be fine to put tracking dots on the dealer's face during a scene. But they didn't have little tiny dots, and so they used basically big splotches of almost like lipstick, which, fast forward, were incredibly hard to paint out. And then, so we had everything set up. We had a beautiful model of the dealer's kind of morphed face, which we used a little bit of, but ultimately what happened is, as the film kind of dragged on in post-production and we were doing less fun things on set, more and more people kind of started to drop away, and our VFX supervisor had some major issues come up for him that were unrelated to the film, but definitely interfered. And we kind of were just left with our pants down VFX wise, and so there was a moment of time where the film was kind of sitting there what do we do? We can't raise enough money to fix this. None of us know how to do it ourselves. And ultimately it came down to a couple of good friends who did know some VFX stuff and were willing to help, wanted to see the project finished. And so they did come on and I would just call it kind of do the best Band-Aids we could, and then from there we were able to go back and like add some of the visual effects that we really wanted to add on there. But there was this whole kind of like we needed to correct for a VFX path that didn't work out first, and that took a long time. Sound design, Justin Valerio went awesome. It took a long time. You know, it's like everything with the film takes a long time. You know, I had to go and sit with him and go through the film, and this was probably I went once or twice a week for months, and you know, went to his home studio, and he was at that point basically just donating time to us because he wanted to see the project finished. And you know, it's just every little scene, every little thing just takes time, and so in something that's that long, you're just looking at anything, any aspect of what you're doing, it's just going to take forever. And that's kind of what you get when you don't have money, is you have to spend time.
Yeah. Did this ever just feel like the project that would never end? And how do you persevere during those moments?
Yeah. So not only did it feel later like the project that would never end, well, I would say more so the project that would never get finished. And that's what my biggest fear was. Like, oh my God, you know, this is something that I started right at the end of school and has trailed on for years. And, you know, we knew it was basically an impossible task when we started doing it. And the way that I told everyone that I looked at it when we were shooting, like anytime someone asked me, like, how are you pulling this off? I would use the analogy of, well, there's two analogies. One, you're pushing a freight train and you're doing it with people. And so once it gets up to momentum, you know, people can jump on the train, like everything's fine. But it's a lot of pushing, and, you know, to maneuver it is even harder. And the other way that I put it is basically you're running at a brick wall, and unless you're running full speed, you won't break through, or you won't see the door at the end, at the last minute. And that's how it felt. It was like there was so many moments where I could have just threw my hands up and said, this isn't working, and walked away. But that would have meant it wouldn't have worked. And so I had to keep pushing, you know, and it did feel like sprinting at a brick wall a lot of times, you know, people telling you, this isn't possible. And, you know, like just, you don't see any way through. And then at the last minute, you're like, there's a way.
So the once you guys finally got done, I'm curious, you just mentioned Gravitas as a distributor. What were your steps? Once you had the film finally finished, what were your steps to actually promote the film? Did you send it to a couple film festivals? Did you try and find a distributor? Yeah,
so one of the last steps in the whole production process was doing a Kickstarter. We did like a Raise the Dead Kickstarter campaign because we needed money for film festivals, basically. But we also needed a little bit of money to complete the film, VFX and sound. Like there was some finishing elements that did cost a little money. We needed to make DVDs, and that was also a good marketing opportunity. So we did a successful Kickstarter, and it wasn't a lot of money, but it was successful. And then we did a premiere, and then we spent a good deal of money on film festivals, which none of them really had, you know, a lot of love for us, unfortunately. But aside from that, it was just kind of friends of friends connections that led us to an agent down in LA, which then eventually led us to a deal with potentially Gravitas, which then fell through because we failed quality control a few times. And then we ended up going with Screening Now. And so I have a lot of faith that they're going to be pushing kind of their film catalog in a lot of directions, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And it's exciting to have the film actually available for rent online. That's kind of like not the total, like, I'm done, finish, walk away, but it's a really nice kind of step to get to say, like, this was somewhat successful, you know? Like, we didn't just give up and fail. We made it somewhere. Oh.
Yeah. So what's and we'll get back to Screening Now in a second. What is next for you? Are you working on another project? Do you have something in the pipeline that you want to get going?
Yeah, I have. I'm not sure how much I want to actually talk about it, but I do have another project that the script is basically done, It's a ultra low budget, kind of the idea. It's a one room film, but it's a psychological horror again. But this one will be a lot darker, a little more claustrophobic, and I don't know, pretty fun. It'll be fun to watch. If not really uncomfortable to watch, it'd be fun to watch. We've been playing around. I have a friend that's a producer at IGN, gaming network, and so we've been playing around with 360-degree video and that kind of thing. We just did one. You can actually check it out. It's called Augmented. Episode 2 just came out, and that's on YouTube on IGN's channel. I know Augmented isn't the easiest term to find because there's a lot of things that are actually mentioning Augmented in an article, but it's a neat kind of exercise in storytelling, and so we might play with that with the new project. But we have some funding coming in down the line, and I'm working out how that's going to work with my possible transition to LA, because I think doing it in LA will be a lot easier than doing it up here in the Bay Area, where everything is very, very, very expensive at the moment.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm going to get the link, and as you just mentioned, Jake's Dead is going to be available on screeningnow.com. I will get that link, and I'll put that in the show notes. What's the best way for people to kind of keep up with what you're doing? If they watch this movie and like it, and they want to just follow along with your career, how can people do that?
I would say Instagram, and my Instagram is @TylorTroy.
Okay.
Pretty sure.
Perfect. I will get that as well and put that in the show notes so people can click over to that. Tylor, excellent interview. I really appreciate your coming on and talking with me. And good luck with Jake's Dead, and good luck on your next film.
All right, great. Nice to talk with you as well.
Perfect. We'll talk to you later. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and then you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, characters, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, you get a free email and fax blast to my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Molly Reynolds and Anna Mail, who recently wrote, produced, and directed their own web series. We dig into the details about exactly how they made it happen, from writing the script to producing it. It's another great example of people going out there and trying to make their own breaks. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Tylor. If you listen to this podcast at all regularly, you'll know that I'm just a big proponent of people going out there and making things happen. I think this is a great example of that. Really listen to this story. It took a lot of persistence, a lot of dedication just to see it through. That's just kind of when you're working on a super low budget, that's just kind of how things go. It's just a matter of plotting ahead, and mistakes are going to be made, and things you're going to have to, reorganize and change directions. But the key is just getting it done, getting it on the board. They've found some distribution for this film, so that's great. It will get out there, and I can assure you, all of that experience, all the contacts they've made, that will only help them on their next project. And a lot of people go into these things, they're kind of looking for that great, that sort of Blair Witch or Paranormal Activity, that sort of super low budget film that really blows up and becomes an international hit. And that's very, very, very unlikely to happen. But that doesn't mean it's still not a big success, or at least a limited success. And again, it's just a matter of doing these things and building the experience. One of the first films I ever worked on was a film that just me and a couple of buddies went out and did. We had a mini DV camera. This was back in the early 2000s. We had a mini DV camera, kind of a low-end camera. I wrote a script. We just went out and shot it. I mean, our total budget was about $10,000, and it was that included buying the camera. And I think the camera at the time was about $2,500 or $3,000. So we basically shot this thing for, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, a feature film. Obviously no one got paid. It was super low budget, but, it gave me the confidence to go on and do something like The Pinch, which was at a little bit of a higher level. One of my buddies was involved, Nathan Ives, who I've had on the podcast, and, he helped produce that film, and he's gone on to write and direct and produce some of his own films. And these sort of very early projects, again, this movie was called Reunion, and it went nowhere. I mean, we basically got it finished. And I actually ended up editing it together. So, we finished the film, but we never really found any distribution, never really went anywhere with it. But that I don't look back at it and feel like it was a mistake or we did something wrong. We kept our budget super low, so there wasn't a lot of downside to doing it. And again, that experience, just seeing the process from beginning to end, gave me confidence, and my buddy Nate as well, just to go on and do bigger and better things. And The Pinch is a much more sophisticated project. Obviously it's still super low budget, but it's not at that $5,000, $6,000 level. And it just these things can grow and they can build. And again, don't go into them thinking that, hey, if this thing doesn't just launch my career to the stratosphere, that means it's a failure. Because I definitely don't look at it like that. I look at it more like exactly what Tylor did with this film. They got a project completed. It's on the board. They've got it on the resume. They can move on to their next project. Again, they found some distribution. They've kept their costs so low. Maybe they'll even be able to recoup most or all, or maybe even make a profit on their film, and then just move on to your next project. And the next project will be a little bit better because they'll be a little more experienced. And I think that's really the value in these things. And hopefully that's why I've been bringing in, I will continue to bring on some people like Tylor that have done some pretty low budget stuff, but got it done and have slowly started to try and move up that food chain in terms of the productions goes. So hopefully people found this interesting and valuable, and most of all inspiring. And I really hope that people start to think maybe that I can go out and shoot a film as well. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.